What's up, guys? My name is Snypersama, but you can call me Sniper. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going with another Warframe, and it's another build. This build is going to be based around my favorite frame, literally since I started the game. Don't get me wrong, I made a video on Dante, and when I first started playing, he was phenomenal. He let me make mistakes thanks to his overguard. He let me do just about everything. However, now that I am nearly MR15, I've got over 100 hours so far in the game. I actually think I'm pushing 150. I am easily doing Steel Path on multiple characters, running through the circuit, enjoying the game as a whole. I thought it was finally time to break down my Steel Path and technically 2 Forma build for my favorite frame, being Sirius and Orion. Now, these brothers are the newest addition to the Warframe setup that is not a prime as an individual, and they are absolutely phenomenal. Not only can you get them for free by going and completing one of the quests, what is it, Jade Stars, Jane Shadows Constellations, but you can also buy them from the market for, I think it's 370 plat. They are absolutely phenomenal. They are one Warframe in 2. What I mean by that is when you equipped them, you have them both active. So we have Sirius and we have Orion. As a whole, we're going to go ahead and touch on their abilities because there are 8 of them. Okay. For Sirius, who is the green brother here, our first ability, throw a Jade Light infused scythe. Basically what this is this is a long range, like, melee slash attack that does heat damage, and as it's traveling along, it will pick anything up and bring it back to you. Our second ability is Jade Stars, and if you play Warframe consistently, you know you've probably heard of Jade Stars because it is absolutely crazy. You conjure Jade Light motes that slowly regenerate over time, attacking enemies, launching the motes, dealing heat damage and status effect. Really, really good, and a wonderful ability to sub-zoom in your Helminth. Number 3, we have Light's Sanctuary. Sirius creates a well of light that heals and revives ally while reducing incoming damage. The well slowly grows in size and power. This one is absolutely phenomenal. Really, really good when it comes to high, not level cap exactly, but high-end content. Steel Path, where you have a minimal amount of reses and you have to have your teammates res you. Things like Archon Hunt, the Deep Archimedia, stuff like that. Okay? And lastly, we have the ultimate Celestial class. Clash. Sirius and Orion take to the skies in a cosmic duel. Each attack consumes a constellation star to inflict colossal blast damage. Match the star's color to the Warframe's color to gain an increased critical chance. Really, really nice. Now, that's only for the first part, which is Sirius. Now we move on to Orion. Orion states, with his first ability, Gravitic Slash, repel enemies with Orion's Sinister Scythe, dealing slash damage, status effect, reducing shields and armor. This is going to be very, very important when we get to the actual build, okay? Next up is Astral Shell. Envelop Orion in an Astral Shell. Upon taking damage, that shell becomes a decoy that draws fire until it is destroyed. Now, here's the thing with the second ability. The second ability, both Astral Shell and Jade Stars, will stay active when you are flipping between one another, because that is your passive. When you hold down the ability, is the basic default. When you hold it down, you will swap between them, which means if you were to hold down the one of Gravitic Slash while you have Orion out, you will actually end up summoning Sirius, which is why I highly recommend you change your setting for it. But we'll get to that in just a minute. Event Horizon is a giant black hole. Orion forms a drifting black hole, trapping enemies within its galaxy, hitting the black hole with the slash or with Sirius's coronal and ejection, so the slash or the infused scythe, and you will either have it bounce away from you or come back to you. Really, really fun because you can sit there and just trap a bunch of enemies in it and then just keep bouncing them back around until they finally end up perishing. Really, really fun ability, and the ultimate is the exact same. Now, as far as the passive goes, like we said, we're going to get into it. When you use an ability, you will, if you just tap it with default commands, you will activate whichever Warframe's ability you're on. If you hold it, however, you will swap to the other one. The new one will come flying in, kick the other, and use their ability. The reason I recommend you guys adjust that setting is because it's a little bit of a headache. So invert tap hold abilities right here. You'll go down to Sirius and Orion and you'll invert it. The reason you'll invert it is now every time you tap the ability, you will end up swapping places. Every time you hold the ability, you will activate it because you're going to be flipping through a lot. This entire build is based around getting to your ultimate and weakening enemies. Now, because we were talking specifically about Orion and his special armor strip that comes from his graphitic slash, there is a couple things we need to know. Although you cannot just have one built character, Sirius and Orion require you to build both of them, you cannot stack the same aura mod, which means on Sirius, you would have something like corrosive projection, but on Orion, you can also not have corrosive projection because they will only have one active, which means it's a wasted slot. So you have a choice here. As far as both build goes, they're very, very similar with a couple of things mainly to focus on, okay? For the aura mod, we go with the Dreamer's Bond and we go corrosive projection. The reason we go with these two specifically is because Dreamer's Bond is just going to make it to where we've got a little bit of energy regen, make it a little easier to sustain because these guys will chew through it. To be able to activate the ultimate, you only need 1 star, but to get the full bonus from the Celestial Clash, you want to be doing all 7 alternating abilities. Because you are alternating abilities so much, you're going to use it quickly. So you still want to make sure you have weapons that are viable. You want to make sure that you have things like equilibrium to kind of help manage the energy that you will need, okay? As far as Sirius goes, we're going to go ahead and break into him. Because Sirius does the majority of the damage everywhere except for the Celestial Clash, and Orion is more of a supportive unit, we are going to be focusing specifically on range and strength with Sirius, which means corrosive projection for the 18% armor, preparation, that way we have the ability to start casting things immediately, streamline for the ability efficiency, that way we're not having to spend an arm and a leg to cast all of our abilities, intensify the little extra strength, augur reach for range, flow for energy max, equilibrium to make things a little bit easier when we're actually going through everything, stretch for more ability range, and then continuity for duration. Duration is really, really important, specifically on Jade Stars and the Astral Shell, as well as the Black Hole, which I cannot remember the name, and Light Sanctuary. Both of these lasting longer is just going to make things a lot easier because you won't have to cast them nearly as often. Now, we've touched on Sirius. We're going to go ahead and go to Orion. And the reason we're starting with our 1 Forma each build for these guys is because the Steel Path one is going to be a little more in depth. Okay. Same thing. Dreamer's Bond or corrosive projection. Just don't use the same mod on both. You will not get the benefit on the secondary frame. And you don't have to just use Sirius or just use Orion as your damage dealer. These guys are so good that you can choose to use both without much issue. In fact, the majority of this setup is going to be pretty much the same. We have preparation for the energy, we have flow for energy max, we have stretch for the range, augur reach for the range, augur secrets for the ability strength. This is where it differs a little bit with Orion. Because we're not really using Event Horizon a ton, it's still fun to use, but depending on what type of mission you're doing, there might be a lot of Eximus, like in the sortie missions where they're specifically stated that's the modifier. This is not going to hit and do anything to any enemy that is CC immune. So Eximus units, some of the stronger units in the game, the elites, so on and so forth. Meaning it ends up being a little lackluster versus the actual healing well that we get on Sirius. Meaning we want to strengthen our force ability because that is where specifically Orion gets just as much power. Okay. The only real thing that is super, super valuable on Orion, at least in my opinion, that you always want to make sure is at its absolute highest is Graphitic Slash. And that's because for 22 energy with corrosive projection on Sirius and Graphitic Slash, you can completely 100% armor strip an enemy, meaning they're going to take a significant more amount of damage. So super, super important that you rock a minimum, okay, of at least a couple of ability strengths to make sure that this ends up getting as high as possible. Case in point, if we were to take off our blind rage, our strength goes down to 89, and you can see here we're only getting 44%. With the corrosive projection, it's still a solid amount. I believe corrosive projection is what, 18% plus the 44. We're looking at what, 62? That's decent, but just with including something like blind rage, we're able to skyrocket that all the way up to 85, include corrosive projection now, and now it is a 100%. It's actually overcapped 100% armor strip, meaning we are going to do a metric ton of damage. And then we have overextended. This is to increase the range in which Graphitic Slash is actually going to hit enemies. The farther it goes, the more benefit you're going to end up receiving from it. Now, we've touched on the one Forma build for each. Now we're going to go ahead and move into the Steel Path variants. The reason we have a Steel Path variant and a one Forma variant is because this is going to be for the people that are a little further along in the game. Maybe you've unlocked Steel Path. Maybe you've gone through the entire storyline. You're working on your star chart and you're prepping for Steel Path. But all in all, you are going to want to make sure that you have the strongest mods available. So we have a couple little things that are different. We're still using corrosive projection and preparation. We have primed flow now instead of regular flow. We have prime continuity instead of regular continuity. We have stretch, precision, intensify, equilibrium, augur reach, augur secrets, and blind rage with molt augmented and arcane energize. Now, for the most part, these are just better variants of what we had before. However, the big thing is going to be the Arcanes attached to these. Now, the reason we use Molt Augmented is the majority of our damage is going to come from our abilities, which means the longer we are actually in a mission progressing and doing those endurance runs, the more value we're getting out of Molt Augmented. You can see mine here is only a ring 3, which is a 0.16 ability strength up to 250 times. If we were to multiply, which we will do real quick on my phone, I should have done this ahead of time to be truth be told, but 0.16 times 250 is a 40% ability strength increase, meaning we are at 270 ability strength once this gets to the highest. And thanks to all of the range that we're putting in on both of our frames, you're gonna end up literally just nuking the entire battlefield with so little effort. It's crazy. Arcane Energize was the one of those things that I was really on the fence about. There are definitely a couple other alternatives here. You could go with Crepuscular or Crepuscular to get invisible damage. You can put this onto your secondary frame like Orion and pair this with an invisible pet. You could do Arcane Impetus because you are going to be triggering status effects. You could go with, I mean, Arcane Concentration for extra duration. It kind of just depends. For the use of everything that I recommend, I would say Energize is a good one to pick up, because while you're still learning and you're still figuring out Sirius and Orion, you're going to want to make sure that you have as much energy as possible, especially because they will literally steal from each other to cast their own abilities. So if both of them have a lot of energy, you don't have to worry about, oh, I accidentally don't have enough. One final tip I will add to this, though. If you try to use your ultimate, your Celestial Clash, on one of your frames that say only has 50 energy and the other one has 200 energy, you will not be able to cast it on the one that has 50. You will only be able to cast it with the one that has 200. Because these two literally occupy the same space, but they are both their own individual frames. Moving on to the Steel Path Orion, we have a very similar setup. The only difference here is it's going to be growing power. On status effects with weapon, personal ability, strength, increased by 25% for 6 seconds. The reason we're using growing power is because when you run out of energy, you want to make sure that you still have weapons that can do something for you. Meaning, using strong weapons like Burst and Prime, Grimoire, Kuvana Core, Compressor Prime, Dual Toxicist, all of these different weapons, or maybe even a couple different melees. You want to make sure that you are not going into this with only your abilities. Yes, you can do it, but just to be safe, make sure that you are not putting yourself at a massive disadvantage if for whatever reason you run out of energy. Growing power is just going to be a good little personal ability strength increase. Preparation, once again, we use overextended here with Precision Intensified. Now, the reason we are going for so much more range is Astral Shell is good, but it's nowhere nearly as good as Jade Light Stars. Event Horizon is good, but it's nowhere near as good as Light Sanctuary, which means we don't need duration, we don't need efficiency. We want range and strength. The reason we want range is because of our Celestial Clash and our Graphitic Slash. You can see here, thanks to our Augur Rage, our Blind Rage, Augur Secrets, Energy, or Prime Flow, Transient Fortitude, and Stretch, we have a 21.2 meter Graphitic Slash, which means when we do our armor strip, it hits everything within 21 meters, as long as it's within that 67.5 meter cone. Okay, super, super nice, super, super good, and it is going to just, you'll see when you try it yourself and when I do a little showcase at the end. The Celestial Clash, though, is the big one. Because Orion is going to be sitting as more of a secondary unit in the whole build, you are going to want to make sure your range is significantly increased. Here we have 68.9, which means this is whenever I do my clash, the two of them, when they hit, are going to have nearly 70 meters of AoE explosion. And this is actually getting a buff really, really soon to where it'll naturally do blast damage, but when Sirius activates his ability, his attack, it'll do heat damage proc, guaranteed, and when Orion does his, it will do slash damage, guaranteed, which means there might be an argument to replace Arcane Energize here soon. We'll see, and I'll let you guys know. As a whole, though, the build is absolutely crazy. It does take a bit more Forma. You can see here I have 3 on Sirius and I have 2 on Orion for a total of 5 versus the initial intro build where you only need 2, 1 for each. If you are end up being even further and you're looking for more ways to optimize, I recommend going with red, yellow, blue, yellow, red. The reason for this is the ability strength is just going to end up getting you a little bit further along, which is nice. Casting speed is very, very nice on these guys because you're flipping through them so often. If you can flip in between them even more, especially when one is weak, it'll end up benefiting you a lot more. As far as the Tau Forged Azure Archon Shard, extra energy is just always nice. So I have it here. You could opt for another red one, could opt for another yellow one. It just kind of depends on what you prefer. Overall, Sirius and Orion are my favorite frames because you get the complexity of more than just one, and you get to have a blast doing it. So without further ado, let's get into this showcase. All right, guys. So I am currently at the Zariman, where I am going to do a Steel Path Exterminate mission. This is level 170 to 175. Now, I'm going to be queuing this with absolutely nobody else. It is just me. But you guys are going to see exactly what I have. We are currently going to be trying our best to not use any of the weapons, and we will have our Nautilus Prime, which you can pretty much use whatever you want. Sirius and Orion are seriously just that strong. So, typically the way that I start one of these, and this is going to be for the 0 Forma or the 2 Forma build, as well as the Steel Path build, go ahead and just start getting your Constellation Stars. You can see in the bottom right now, I have 2 stars available. One is purple, one is gray. That is because those are the colors of each of mine, okay? So what you do is you kind of cycle your abilities. The reason I cycle all of my abilities is to start getting them ready, because this is pretty much what you're doing. You walk up to a group of enemies on either frame, you throw your scythe, you do your Graphitic Slash, and you can see right now they are already getting armor stripped. Now, here's the thing about what happens next. Now, you end up flying around because I've activated my ultimate. Now that your ultimate is active, you do all of these different attacks. Each of these different attacks, when you do them in order, based on your left or right click, I'm not sure what it is on controller, you'll have to tell me in the comments, you end up doing a ton of damage as long as you match the color too. So, because we do not need our 3s active, I'm just going to keep swapping back and forth. You guys see how I'm currently swapping one just by pressing? If you do not change the invert hold, what happens here is you have to hold those down every single time. And it's not a bad thing necessarily, but you want to make sure that you're not just slogging along for no reason. By going in order with each of your strikes, though, what happens is you start to build up a ton of extra Why is this Thrax giving me a hard time right now? You end up building up a ton of extra stars. Building up each of those stars is just going to let you cast your ult even sooner. The reason we have preparation is to make it as easy as humanly possible to keep our damage. The more stars you have when you go to activate, the more opportunity you have to build up crit. The more crit you have, the more damage you're going to do, in which case, most of the time, by the time you get to your 5th hit, sometimes your 6th hit, you'll almost guarantee red hits, red crits. And you can see here, just starting it out, I only had 3. We didn't do a whole lot. We include the different slashes, though. We have armor stripped the shock excellence to where he just gets absolutely obliterated. The whole idea here is to manage your energy between both sources. If you can keep your energy at a decently high point to where you're not running out every 2 seconds, keep your Astral Shell and your Jade Stars active, you will end up just breezing through everything. This is where those meters come into play, because there are enemies that are significantly further away than I should be able to hit. But I'm able to do so. You can see there on my 5th hit, not only was it 2.5 mil, but it was 2.5 mil as a red crit, a super crit. You can see here, this Thrax gets absolutely obliterated, and you know, once you have done it correctly, you will do the spin-up attack, where the two brothers kind of intertwine with each other to do a final big strike. The whole thing with Sirius and Orion really is just energy management. If you can sit there and you can put a little time into making sure that you're not overdoing it, you can just run through missions with ease. In fact, if I were to sit here and just go for a moment, you'll see it doesn't matter. Enemies don't even get an opportunity. They just implode. This entire group up here, gone. And that wasn't even my big final hit. 3.6 million on one enemy, 2.9 on another, with complete ease. You guys can see I'm literally not struggling whatsoever in this entire mission. There's nothing to worry about because these guys are just potent. There is the added benefit of every time you swap, you do end up getting a little bit of an invulnerability window. If I remember correctly, it is like 1.5 seconds, which means you can kind of do like a pseudo shield gate to keep yourself alive if you start really struggling. Let's say you're getting burned by a couple different status ailments, you can swap between them while your other one remains immortal or invulnerable. So if you start to get really weak, you're struggling, whatever it is, maybe you're getting a little overwhelmed, swap between them like this. You can see top right, I go invulnerable for just enough to be able to give myself a little bit of breathing room. The whole thing with Sirius and Orion is just manage your energy. If you can manage your energy, you've got nothing to worry about. This was a very easy setup. This was very easy to put together, and obviously you guys can make your own modifications as you see fit. But Sirius and Orion are just so strong that you don't need to worry about anything else. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for my Sirius and Orion Steel Path and Minimal Forma build. If you guys are interested in watching more Warframe content, let me know what Warframes you guys think that I should do builds on, because I am having so much fun on the game, I don't even care. I have so much extra plat because I got a 75% discount. So I was able to get $200 worth of platinum for 50 bucks. I'll take it. I mean, who wouldn't? So if there are frames you guys want to see more information on, if there are weapons you want to see builds on, let me know. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you like some of the fashion that I've showed you so far, and I'll even drop some of those. Maybe I'll make a fashion frame video. We'll see. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for today's video. Thank you all for coming and watching. Thank you all for hanging out. Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see all of you in the next one. Very well.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.